Turn off every light in your house right now and just sit there for 30 seconds. Notice what happens. Your ears get sharper, your skin prickles. Your brain starts building monsters out of coat racks and door frames. You know logically that nothing has changed. The room is the same room, but some older part of you does not believe that for a second. That reaction did not start with horror movies or campfire stories or your parents warning you about the boogeyman. It is much, much older than that. It is older than language, older than fire. It might be older than our own species. For most of human history, the dark was not a mood, it was a body count. Here's the thing, we like to imagine early humans as fearless, wandering the savannah with spears, kings of the food chain. That image is mostly wrong. For an enormous stretch of our evolutionary past, we were not the apex predator. We were, quite often, the meal. Now zoom out to South Africa, to a cave system called Swartkrans. In the early 1980s, a researcher named C.K. Brain went digging through thousands of fossilized bones pulled from that site, expecting to find evidence of early hominins as clever hunters. Instead, in his 1981 study, he found something unsettling. Skulls from an early human relative, Paranthropus robustus, punctured with two holes spaced exactly the width of a leopard's lower canines. Not spear wounds, bite marks. Our ancestors weren't just hunting in that landscape. They were prey items, dragged into caves and trees by the same big cats that still haunt the African night today. That changes the picture completely. If you were a small, slow, weak-clawed primate walking around 2 million years ago, night was not an inconvenience. Night was when the animals that could kill you saw perfectly, and you saw almost nothing. Human eyes are terrible after sunset. We have poor night vision compared to almost every serious predator on the African continent. Lions, leopards, hyenas, their eyes are built with a reflective layer called the tapetum lucidum that multiplies available light. Ours isn't. We are, biologically speaking, walking around half-blind for a third of every day, and we have been for the entire span of our evolution. So the fear of the dark isn't superstition. It's math. It's the accumulated statistical memory of every ancestor who did not survive a night in the open. That sounds like a clean explanation, simple, satisfying, except it doesn't fully hold up. Because if fear of the dark were purely about predators, you would expect it to fade the moment predators stopped being a daily threat. It hasn't. Modern humans, living in cities with locked doors and streetlights, still report the same spike in anxiety after sunset. Children who have never seen a wild predator in their lives still lie awake convinced something is standing in the closet. If this were only about lions, the fear should have quietly retired by now. It didn't get the memo. Here's where it gets complicated. Some researchers argue this isn't really about predators at all. It might be about information, or the total absence of it. During the day, your brain constantly cross-checks 1,000 tiny visual cues to confirm the world is safe. Shapes, movement, distance, depth. At night, that entire verification system goes dark, and your brain does something very specific in response. It doesn't shut down the alarm system, it turns it up. With less real data coming in, your threat detection circuitry starts filling the gaps with worst-case guesses. That rustling curtain becomes a plausible intruder, not because your brain is broken, but because uncertainty itself reads as danger to a nervous system built for survival first and accuracy second. Let that sit for a moment. Your fear of the dark might not be fear of anything specific. It might be fear of not knowing, dressed up as fear of monsters. But even that clean psychological story has a hole in it. A real skeptic would point out that plenty of nocturnal and crepuscular animals move through darkness with total confidence. Bats, owls, foxes, deer. If uncertainty alone caused terror, evolution would have solved that problem the same way it solved it for them, with better night vision or specialized senses. It didn't do that for us. Instead, we did something stranger. We changed the environment around the fear instead of changing our own biology. And this is where the story gets its biggest hard anchor point. In 2012, a team led by archaeologist Francesco Berna, working with researchers from the University of Toronto and Boston University, published findings from Wonderwork Cave, deep inside a hillside in South Africa. Using microscopic analysis of ash and burned bone fragments buried nearly 1 million years ago, they confirmed something extraordinary. This was, at the time, the earliest solid physical evidence of controlled fire use by hominins, tucked far inside a cave, away from lightning strikes or wildfires that might start a blaze on their own. In other words, someone was deliberately keeping a fire burning in a specific location, deep underground, for a very long stretch of time. That is not a survival accident. That is a decision. Think about what that decision actually solved. Fire didn't just cook food or provide warmth, it gave early humans something no other animal on that landscape had: artificial daylight. A hard boundary between the world they could see and understand and the world beyond the firelight where their senses stopped working. For the first time, darkness had an edge to it, and humans could choose which side of that edge to stand on. The wild part is what that boundary probably did to the human brain over time. Sitting together in a lit circle, surrounded by darkness on all sides, is one of the only environments in nature where a group of primates can stay awake, alert, and social for hours without foraging or fighting. Some anthropologists studying modern hunter-gatherer groups, including work on the Hadza and Sand peoples' sleep and social patterns published in the early 2000s by anthropologist Carol Worthman, have pointed to fire-lit night gatherings as a uniquely human space for storytelling, teaching, and bonding. Darkness didn't just threaten early humans, it may have accidentally invented the campfire story, the shared myth, the first version of culture passed down out loud. Now bring that back to you. Every time you dim the lights and gather people around a table, a screen, a candle, you are running an ancient program, the circle of light. The unseen edge just past it. Your nervous system still runs that same script, even in a locked apartment on the 14th floor with nothing more dangerous nearby than a spider. And this is where the story stops being just about predators and starts being about identity. Across wildly different unconnected cultures, Norse mythology, West African folklore, Aboriginal Dreamtime stories, ancient Mesopotamian texts, there's a recurring architecture. Chaos and monsters live in darkness. Order, ancestors, and safety live in light. That is not a coincidence borrowed from one culture copying another. It looks like independent invention, the same psychological blueprint showing up again and again because it was built into the hardware long before any of those cultures existed to write it down. The honest answer is that we don't know exactly how much of this fear is inherited biology and how much is inherited story, passed from parent to child for 100,000 years of nights. The evidence from bones and ash can only tell us that darkness was dangerous and that our ancestors fought back against it with fire. It cannot tell us exactly what was happening inside their minds the first time the flames went out and the dark closed back in. That gap matters. It means the fear you feel at night isn't fully explainable, and maybe it isn't supposed to be. It survived for a reason science can only partially reconstruct. So go ahead and turn the lights back on now. Notice how instantly your body relaxes, how the coat rack turns back into a coat rack. That relief is not a small, silly thing. That relief is a technology. It took controlled fire, cooperative firelight circles, and hundreds of thousands of years of storytelling to build a species that could feel safe after sunset at all. You didn't inherit a fear of the dark, you inherited the memory of everyone who almost didn't make it through the night.